This story is not your typical princess story. In fact, the main character is already dead. But if you keep listening, I'll tell you how a young woman found herself at the bottom of a cliff with no idea how she got there. You know how they say your life flashes before your eyes right before you die? Well, hers didn't. She didn't see shit. All she could make out was the ground rushing fast to meet her face and the air scattering to get out of her way. The impact to the ground didn't hurt her for too long. Her body ricocheted a bit off the rocks, but the hard impact to her head knocked her clean out, and that's all she remembered. So why the hell is she opening her eyes to a bright golden sky and setting sun? Your guess is as good as mine. She sits up with her head pounding and neck tingly and stiff. Gingerly, she wiggles her arms and legs. It didn't feel like anything was broken. She didn't know if she should be alarmed or relieved. She tilts her head back to look up at the steep cliff she fell from. You can't even see the top of it. She remembered taking a tumble through the air and hitting the hard ground. So how is it that she's here now? She squints at the jagged cliff and wonders how she even got up there. A panicked voice filled with rage echoes around in her head, tugging at the edges of her memory.
"I'm gonna kill you,"
it says. A shiver zips up her spine. Was that her voice? Is that what she was thinking when she fell off the cliff? The thought feels intense and personal, like maybe she was thinking it to herself because she was angry with herself. She looks back up at the cliff and feels a trickle of anger zip through her all over again. She must have couldn't forgive herself for something and wondered if that's why she jumped. She slowly gets to her feet and dusts off her legs. Her joints let out gentle pops as she smooths a hand over her frizzy curly hair. Her hand flies to her mouth, thinking that maybe she was given another chance. But another chance to do what? She looks around at her surroundings and wonders where she is. There's nothing but rocky grassland for as far as the eye can see, besides the cliffs that randomly jut up from the ground and impale the sky. The harder she tries to remember, the more her head throbs. She must have gotten a concussion when she fell. She couldn't even remember who she was. The sky takes on deep indigo purples and pink hues in the silence of the dusk. She knew she couldn't wander out there in the middle of nowhere at night. There's no telling what kind of animals could be lurking. She has to find someone who could help her and tell her who she is, and probably get checked out by a physician. She peered closer at the horizon to see which way she should go and spots shingled buildings and homes in a town off in the distance. Lights in many of the windows twinkle on, and a gated entrance into the town is illuminated by giant lanterns that blink on as the sun continues to set. She's relieved. Maybe they'll have food and water. She heads towards the town excited, feeling the world go topsy-turvy every once in a while as she gathered her bearings. But she soon finds her equilibrium, along with a paved road that leads all the way to the entrance of the settlement, just as the sky turns completely dark purple. Tall open wooden gates welcome her past the stone walls as people mill about on the evening-lit cobblestone streets. The street lamps lining the cobbled road are all lit, casting a muddy orange glow against the buildings and people. A couple of street vendors catch her attention as they close up their stands and put their handmade merchandise away. "Excuse me, sir," she called to a middle-aged man who's loading his produce onto a wagon. He continues to work without glancing her way, engulfed in his task at hand. She walks up behind him as he turns back to his stand to grab something. "Excuse me," she tries again. He suddenly whips around with a heavy sack of potatoes and heaves them towards the wagon behind her. She dives out of the way, her body hitting the ground like a brick. The sensation was oddly familiar. "Hey, watch it!" she growled, getting back to her feet and dusting herself off. He ignores her, not even concerned that he almost beheaded an innocent woman. "Rude! Has your mother not taught you any better?" she huffs, storming away. If he didn't want to be bothered, he could have just said so. Maybe it's because it's evening and everyone's trying to get home, but that's still no excuse to act so rudely to someone only asking for help. She heads further down the streets, lined with modest-looking houses and shops, until she comes upon what she assumes is the town square. Well, more like a town circle, since the center of the town is just a big circle with more shops, taverns, and inns lining the perimeter. An inn to her left catches her eye. It looks fancy, with its giant wooden porch and rocking chairs sitting out front. There's already a couple of men lounging in them, smoking. The windows are lit with a warm and welcoming glow and framed with purple matching curtains.
I'm sure the desk clerk or someone could help me in a fine establishment like this,
she thinks to herself. She heads towards the inn. The sweet smoke coming from the older gentleman's pipes curls towards her, as well as bits of their inquisitive conversation about politics and the monarchy. She climbs the porch steps and slips inside the open door of the inn to a well-lit, comfy sitting area. A giant fireplace to her right warms the entire space, with a long reddish couch and matching red chairs in a semicircle around it. A petite woman in a long dress is already lounging on the couch with a book, looking content. She moseys towards the counter sitting at the back of the inn. A middle-aged woman, seemingly in her late 40s, is giving a young man instructions on cleaning the rooms.
Pardon me,
she clears her throat. They didn't seem to hear her in the intensity of their discussion.
Excuse me,
she tries again. The young man nods his head and takes some folded sheets from off the counter, heading down a long hall to the right. She calls after him, asking him to wait, and the woman disappears behind the counter to a back room that says employees only. Great. Of all the places she could have stumbled upon, she just had to come to a town where everyone is rude and hard of hearing. But she was going to get some help whether they liked it or not. She trudges after the young man, brisking past a couple of patrons heading to and from their rooms. She follows him with balled fists and gritted teeth as she watches him open a door to a room using a set of keys on his hip.
This is an establishment. You're supposed to help customers.
She barges into the room after him like a bat out of hell and glares at him as he puts new bedding on the bed and cleans the room.
So you're gonna play it like that, huh? Is this how all your guests are treated? You ignore them and let them fend for themselves?
Nothing.
Fine then. I'll just follow you around until you give in.
She turns her back on the boy, looking around the room frustrated. What was she going to do now? If he would just point her in a general direction, then she could get out of his hair. But he's stubborn, just like everyone else in this god-forsaken town. No one will help her. She doesn't know where she is, nor does she have a place to go. The boy finishes his cleaning and gathers his tools to leave.
Well, since you already cleaned this room, I might as well take it, right? It's the least you could do for ignoring me.
He says nothing.
I'll take your silence as a yes.
He takes his belongings and closes the door behind him, leaving her to herself. That was easy. How curious, she thought as she flops onto the bed looking around. This is a nice place. The queen-size bed is soft and the sheets smell fresh, like lavender. There's a really nice closet and wardrobe for belongings. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any. She doesn't have anything. No money. No identification.
Who the hell am I? She thought.
She balls over to her side, sadness sinking in as her body deflates from fatigue, now that she's stopped running around trying to get someone to help. It's beginning to set in how truly alone she is. Her eyes drift towards the window framed by purple curtains and gazes out at the darkening sky. Someone has to be out there looking for her. Someone has to be wondering where she is. Maybe someone in this very town. She had to have come from somewhere. From someone. Exhaustion washes over her as she closes her eyes. She's too tired to move. And once her eyes settled for the night, she slept like a corpse. She didn't wake until a shuffling and scratching sound coming from the door startles her. She sits up and adjusts to the sun shining in through the windows. The sound continues. Maybe the boy from last night has come back with a peace offering for ignoring her. Just a second, she called. She yawns and stretches as a key rattles in the lock, and suddenly a group of people burst into the room. She jumps in shock and outrage. A loud, chatty man with a stern-looking woman and 2 children bustle about the room, opening drawers and the wardrobe as they haphazardly throw their stuff about.
Have you people no shame?
She shouted. A different young man from last night is helping them with their bags.
Excuse me, sir.
The 2 children jump on the bed without warning. She screams, rolling out of the way so neither one of them impales her with their tiny bony bodies. She gives out a short yip as she hits the floor, then scurries to her feet.
Can't you see that someone's in here? You can't control your children from jumping on strangers? How rude!
They ignore her and continue dashing about the room, talking about places they want to visit in town. The man they're with chucks their big heavy luggage right at her legs, and she has to jump to keep from losing a toe. She stumbles into the wall and slyly inches her way closer and closer to the exit, keeping her back flush against the wall as not to get pummeled by this chaotic family. She squeezes past the young man and stumbles out into the hall with a huff.
Ugh, I hate this place.
The man turns around to leave the room, and she stands right in front of him with her arms crossed.
Is this how this inn is run?
He doesn't say anything. In fact, he doesn't even react. It's like he's looking right through her.
Hello?
She calls, concerned, waving her hand in front of his face. Nothing. Instead, he unexpectedly leans forward and time completely stops as her hand slips right through his face, dispersing into little particles before snapping back into shape as the young man moves his head, shaking as if he just got the shivers. She freezes. Her heart plummets into her stomach and her body turns ice cold as she stares at her shaking hands.
What is this?
She stumbles backwards down the hall and walks straight through a woman coming out of her room, her body going into a cold shock as it disperses into a million specks before snapping back together as she passes through. A scream rips from her lips as her ears fill with the rushing of her own blood.
They can't see me? They can't feel me? This town is cursed.
She takes off down the corridor, gasping for air as her legs walk right through luggage sitting out in the hall, and her shoulders go straight through people leaving their rooms for breakfast.
What is wrong with me?
She makes it to the den and bursts through the front door of the inn, stumbling down the porch stairs on shaking jelly legs. The sun blazes high in the sky as the town square buzzes with people. Women in classy dresses visit the surrounding shops to barter. Children kick around balls and toys. Newspaper boys on street corners call out today's news. And the hustle and bustle of people trying to get to work send her into a dizzying frenzy. None of them even glance her way. No one stops to see if she's okay. They walk right past her, right through her, as if she didn't exist. Tears of fear and confusion prick her eyes and burn her throat. She thought she walked away from that cliff unscathed. She thought she was lucky. Her breath hitches as the children's brown ball gets loose and bounces right through her chest without losing momentum. She thought that maybe she had been given a second chance, but she wasn't given a second chance at all. Her heart sinks as the truth finally dawns on her. She was dead. This story is called Dead Queen. I'll be posting episode 2 soon, but if you can't wait to see what happens next, you can read it in its entirety on my site, aaliyahzealous.com.